Hello, and you are listening to the Book Was Better podcast, the podcast where we talk about the book of the film. I'm Luke.
I'm Courtney.
And this week we're talking about Poltergeist.
Hey you, put down the popcorn and turn on the light. It's gonna be alright, my friend. In the end, take my hand. Trust me, the book was better.
Very informal opening, not saying our surnames. What is this?
You didn't even come in with me on Poltergeist.
I did, in my head.
Oh,
I was being a telepath, a psychic.
okay.
So I'm
Guess
getting
that
into
counts. Yes, this episode will be completely psychically
Yes.
put into you. So unplug your headphones, roll them up, put them back in your pocket. We are going to put this one directly into your head, like a certain little tangina that will be fondling Fossicking around later. Not fondling. We will not fondle a tangina. Welcome back, Courtney. God, it's been a little while.
It has been a while. I've been very busy on many things. I've been on quests.
Quests?
Yes. And now I've returned and I'm a badass, a leather-wearing badass. So if you hear any, squeaky noises, it's my leather jacket.
Creaking. You have leveled up. And we are going to do one of the films, which has been turned into a book here, which scared the absolute shit out of me as a kid. This is one of my most terrifying films of all time.
Yeah, it was always one of those films when I was little. This and The Exorcist, your parents would say, "Oh, this is the most terrifying film ever. Don't watch it. Don't even watch the trailer. Stay far away from it."
Yeah, I think The Exorcist is still scarier, but I think the memory of this film, because I saw it kind of bits and pieces of it at a very young age, I've always been sort of nervous, even to the point where after reading the book I watched a bit last night. And although it's not as scary as I think it is, I was just really tense. Like, the whole time I was watching it, I was like, oh, this movie kind of unsettles me. And there's a few things there. I think one that they managed to really capture those basic childhood fears that everybody's afraid of, like the clown doll. And
Why is there even a clown doll in his room?
it's a terrifying doll. And the big creepy tree is another really scary thing. But also even just the lighting and the sort of feel of that footage. And I'm also really terrified by this film and made uneasy by the fact that I know that the two daughters in the film both died within the next few years.
Movie curses they're fascinating, but yeah.
It's kind of awful to watch this little kid and know that she never became an adult. Like, that's really sad, and I find that hard to watch because of that. So look, if people don't know, and not everyone has seen Poltergeist, was this the first time you'd seen it in prep for this?
I thought it was really cool. So it does hold up as someone who's seen it for the first time, but in my head I was comparing it to Ghostbusters or From Beyond, which is a rather obscure film, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a real classic. Spielberg didn't direct it. It was directed by Tobe Hooper, who did Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but Steven Spielberg's fingerprints are all over this film.
Yeah, it's very Spielberg.
It very much feels like a Spielberg, and if you watch any behind-the-scene footage or interviews or anything like that, it's all Spielberg.
Oh, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, though, the original, is still really terrifying.
Yeah, that's a very effective film as well. But you've just got to say, there's been a lot of debate as to who really directed this film. I think Tobe Hooper has been kind of pissed off at the suggestion that he didn't do it, and he seems quite terse when asked about it in interviews. Spielberg very much talks about it like he did it. And I was just going to say that this film is so successful and is such a classic that I imagine that if Tobe Hooper was really great at what he did on that film, that Spielberg would have collaborated with him more and more in the future. And I don't think they ever did work together again.
Yeah, I think the evidence is pretty apparent there.
And it was contractual, apparently. Like, Spielberg wasn't allowed to direct another film before E.T. So that's why he didn't direct this. And he actually offered Tobe Hooper E.T. and he said, "Nah." So Spielberg chose to direct E.T. and gave him this one. And then, of course, E.T. became like the most successful film of all time for a while there. and obviously sort of made the Spielberg that we know. And this film and E.T. were shot on the same street.
Oh. It does look very similar, although every sort of 80s suburban neighbourhood kind of looks similar.
And look, the author here is James Kahn. Now, he's the author of Return of the Jedi, Temple of Doom, which we have done on the show, and The Goonies, which we'd like to do on the show. I know Lizzie's got her eye on that one. So, yeah, he's the guy that the Spielberg co get in when they want to do a novelization. And I'm really pleased to say, normally the show is just ripping the shit out of books. This is a really well-written book. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I think the true test for me of whether a novelization is good is if you read it and think, I would enjoy this even if there wasn't a movie attached. And even more so, this makes sense even if there wasn't a movie attached. That's when I know that he's done a good job.
Yeah, I was going to say that it makes sense on its own. And that it feels like it's really trying and it's having fun, whereas most of the things we review are just... It feels like they've just bashed out something on a keyboard and not looked back at it after the fact.
I think you know that it's been successful as well when they create new scenes, and there's quite a lot of new material in this book. But you find yourself going, oh yeah, I think I remember that from the film, just because it fits so well. Like, you can picture those characters doing it. Like, you can see it in your head so clearly.
Most of the scenes.
Yeah, there's maybe a little bit of a fantasy dream battle.
Doctor Strange stuff.
That might be a little hard to put on screens, particularly in 1982. Maybe someone could have a bash at it now. Maybe a Guillermo del Toro or something.
Guillermo.
Did
you hear that? I think it was a little girl who was in a specific room. She had trouble saying Guillermo, so she said, "Oh, you can call me Totoro."
Totoro. He said you should have said Steve or something. That's really easy. All right, now look.
She was a Japanese girl.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So Totoro was a neighbour, presumably.
Yeah, presumably. Yeah. All Japanese little kids have Totoro as a neighbour.
Yes. Yes. Well, it's very cramped conditions there. Everybody's the neighbour of somebody. Everybody. We should read the beginning because we've got quite a lot to get through. And this is, like I said, one of these really rare books that I don't think I wrote down a single joke in these notes. I just want to talk about a success that it is. I mean, it's so exciting to have something which doesn't suck.
Yeah, I started out writing notes that were sort of nitpicking, but then I found, there's not really much for me to go on here.
It's kind of the perfect book, but we'll let you be the judge. We'll read out some bits. This is a longer beginning than normal, but I chose to include it just because it covers so many of the characters. It lays out everything very clearly. O'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Very patriotic start.
This is KTCV, Cuesta Verde Television, ending scheduled broadcast of our programming today. Please join us again at 6:30 for a traffic watch, and again, have a pleasant good morning.
The American flag suddenly disappeared from the screen and was instantly replaced by the hiss of static snow shedding an eerie bluish light across the living room. Steve Freeling slept soundly in his recliner, 15 feet from the set, lot and parcel maps strewn on the floor around him, lease contracts covering his lap. Except for the white noise of the television, the house was dark and quiet.
Upstairs, in the large front bedroom, Steve's wife Diane curled peacefully under her pillow, undisturbed by dream or doubt. The lace curtains blew gently at the open window on the quiet night's respiration. Outside it was autumn, a shadow of change in the air.
Down the hall from Diane was Dana's room. Dana was 15, cute, dark-haired, snoring, her hand loosely slumped over her own personal telephone. Jeans in a pile by the bed, homework in a pile on the chair, diary stuffed under the mattress, lip gloss poised and waiting on the vanity. She slept like an unself-conscious heiress.
Next to the master bedroom was the children's room. Robbie, 7, slept a fitful sleep, wrapped arm in paw with his terry cloth bear. The floor was covered with a profusion of toys, games, clothes, crayons, and the like. The joyous clutter of the very young. A stuffed clown doll sat lopsided in the rocking chair. Across the room in a matching imitation frontier bed slept Robbie's 5-year-old sister, Carol Ann. At a few minutes past 2:30 in the morning, Carol Ann opened her eyes.
Sinister! So, we've got 3 kids, 2 parents in this house in the suburbs, And I love that it lays out all that for us, goes, here you go, this is who they all are, let's get some shit happening straight away.
And some nice lines in there as well. They got a bit creative with Dana, especially.
Slept like an unself-conscious heiress. Yeah.
One thing I noted, when I was watching the film, I didn't quite understand what was going on, but yeah, apparently television stops at a certain point at night. That's strange to me.
Yeah, it really did. And you know how I'm talking about the this idea of it played on a lot of childhood fears? What I like about that is it did scare the shit out of us as kids and made us very, very frightened to have static on. Now, when I was really little, like my mum was a single parent, and I was always feeling kind of vulnerable and scared in the house. And on some nights would sleep in her room. And she had a little black and white TV in the room. And sure enough, like you'd go to sleep with that on and then wake up and it would just be the static, and it cast the most eerie glow over the room. And it's really freaky. And I used to be terrified to see the static after this film.
Yeah, I remember, I'm probably the last generation to actually see what static is. Because, television these days, if it's a blank channel, then you get a blank screen. But, my dad had this old wooden box-style TV, and that became my first bedroom TV. I actually loved staring at the static, because if you stared at it long enough, you started to see things. It was great.
Because 2:30 at the morning now, you would get infomercials for, like...
Pretty much.
Abba Dabba's burning machines, or there's that... I always think of that classic rock ad, where they're like selling you a CD full of all these classic rock anthems. Like, if you leave me now, you take away the
I've seen the
biggest part
parodies
of
of those
me.
more than I've seen the actual commercials.
Ooh, baby, please don't go. So, the little girl's nose was pressed to the static-filled tube. Her gaze tracked the dancing lights as if they were runes, flashing a secret message for her eyes only. Where are you? She sang. Come closer, I want to see you. Diane stared bleakly at her daughter and shivered.
No, she was screaming at the screen in the movie.
It is such a classic image, the little girl pressed against the staticky television.
Yeah.
And then, I've heard that that's the successful thing to do in horror, is you make people afraid of something that they're constantly around. Something that they have to interact with.
Well, that's a Stephen King trope that he's flogged to death.
And in the 80s, the television was God. It was the absolute centerpiece of the house.
It feels like it's a commentary on that, yeah.
Yeah, so to make you shit scared of the television is such a wonderful, I think the only thing you could go next from there would be the toilet.
Toilet.
The toilet.
Toilet.
The toilet.
Bathroom for the Americans.
I say, the toilet.
Yeah, Americans get a bit offended when you say toilet. You gotta say bathroom. But yeah, all those films that they've done, horror films I should say, where they base it on the internet, they've not quite had the same success.
I would like to see one where people are leaving ridiculous comments on YouTube, and then a big hand comes out of the screen and tears their face off and then goes back into the screen. I think that would be a wonderful horror film. Look, James Kahn is pretty great. He does a very good job the next day of painting this suburban bliss. It's lawnmowers, there's football games, kids playing frisbee, there's barbecues. And even when he starts to describe the characters, especially the female ones, I like that he was very interested in who they are, not how hot they are, which seems to be what normally happens in these things.
Where Steve was big, Diane was slight. Wispy auburn hair, delicate fingers, even her arms seemed fragile. Yet she was by far the feistier of the two. In an instant, her pixie face could flush with blood, her eyes focused with will and fire, and then nothing could dissuade her from her purpose. Steve never tried to stand up to this force.
So yeah, I thought they were all really nicely developed characters. Even the kid, and kids are notorious, they're like drunken midgets. But even the kid here has depth. Diane had special love for her youngest. The child was wise beyond her years and had a naive fearlessness about life that was enviable. I really like that, and I think that sums up Carol Ann to a degree. She's got this real sort of curiosity about the world and life and death, and those themes of life and death are seeded very, very early. In fact, this sequence where that line is used is when her bird dies. And it's interesting also to note that is the only death in the entire film, is the bird.
Oh, yeah. Huh. Well, that's the thing, is that in most ghost stories, they don't actually kill or directly kill a person, so there's that.
I guess they've got to keep them going.
Also, yeah, you're having kids in horror films, you either get the kids who can't act, and then you feel like they're just being, poked with a stick to say the line. But no, she really did have something otherworldly about her. And the line that I find the most heartbreaking is towards the end, where she goes, "Not again." Like, she really, it looks like she's just been through hell, which she has.
Yeah, quite literally, I think, by that point. Robbie, the brother, who's 7, he's not an oil painting. He's not particularly great in the film.
No.
But I really love how Kahn develops and foreshadows the scary tree. He'd in fact developed a rather complex relationship with the giant oak that told him secrets about the earth. He told it about his adventures with pirates. It contained a hidden door to an underground city at times. At other times it was a great monster god from Jupiter with wild flame-blackened arms, waiting to be released from its spell, and only Robbie knew the words to free it. It almost always heard Robbie's thoughts. Sometimes the thoughts made the tree angry, sometimes they laughed together.
That is something I can relate to, as a kid. My backyard was the coolest. We had this little, can't remember what kind of, it was a bush though, and there was this little opening you could climb into. It was almost like a nest. And there was also the tree. So my brother would climb from the tree, and that was like, the tree kingdom was his. And then I was with so he had the squirrel people, I was with the fox people, and we had our little den.
Yeah, when I was in my later teenage years, I have a lot of fond memories of bushes and openings.
Oh, you just ruined it.
Ruined it! But did you ever have those kind of things that you were afraid of as a kid, and you created little private rituals around them that nobody... It's a very OCD thing, which is something I kind of struggled with. Like, I was afraid, when I was really little, afraid of my Yoda action figure. So whenever I, put him into the patented vinyl Star Wars case, which had 2 trays of figures, I would always put him at the top and pat him, nicely before I closed the thing so that he didn't murder me. Bear in mind, he was about 1.5 inches.
What? Indian in the closet?
Yeah, but he was pretty frightening. So I always made sure he had a prime spot.
No, as long as everything was nice and routine and orange and green weren't together in where I could see, then yeah, I was pretty okay.
Well, Yoda was green with an orange snake around his neck.
Ooh,
yeah,
that would be a problem for me.
Problematic. I wouldn't use the green texter either because I was afraid of the Joker on the Batman 60s series.
Wow,
yeah.
You are a neurotic child.
I was a pussy kid. I do love how the creepiness...
Do you ever sometimes wonder, you just look around at your friends and you go, if we were kids, who would win in a fight? I bet Child Me could take Child You in a fight.
I bet Child You would fight so fucking dirty.
Feral.
I would be fetal and you would be feral. There's this great sequence which isn't in the film. I wish it was. It's at Robbie's birthday party and he goes on a treasure hunt. The parents have hidden prizes around for all the kids and he's the last one to find his. And he gets a clue and he reaches behind the barbecue and...
something had bitten him. He looked at his hand, more startled than anything else. His index finger was a bit red and still stung. He appeared back into the dark collection of upright bricks at the obscure thing, whatever it was. There. Did it move? Robbie picked up the barbecue poker in his right hand, raised the poker of his head, kicked away one low wall of bricks, and jumped back. It was the clown doll! His old stuffed clown doll, grinning devilishly, a little too broadly. It gave Robbie the creeps to look at it. He backed off. This didn't make sense. Was this his prize? Couldn't be. Besides, the clown had been up in the bedroom just before the party. Robbie had seen it there. He was certain. Sitting right up in the rocking chair. Now it grins at him from a funny angle, caught between 2 bricks.
I love that idea. It's not just his clown doll sort of appearing somewhere where it really shouldn't be, but it fucking bites him.
That's just... But he doesn't see it do it either. It's there, there's nothing else that could have bitten him. It must have been that.
And when he, puts his hand back after being bitten, that's the scariest possible thing that could be there between the bricks, is this doll, especially when he knows it was in his room, and then later on he's back in the room and the clown's back where it should be.
I would set that thing on fire. Why does he keep pushing
terrifying. Yeah, I know. He kind of just begrudgingly accepts it. In the movie, he puts sheets and things over its head. He never goes
He didn't pat it nicely before he put the sheet over its head. See?
Yeah, but his parents are so fucking mellow. I mean, we're about to see them smoking pot in bed. You'd think he'd be able to just come up, sit at the table and go, Dad, Mum, I'm sorry. I know, Aunt Flo bought me that clown doll with really good intentions.
She carved it herself out of a tree that was on top of an Indian burial ground.
Yeah, but I'm 7 years old. It scares the shit out of me. Can we give it to Goodwill? But that's the thing. That wouldn't help, would it? Because the next night he's there in bed and it's tapping on the window, grinning at him.
Only fire is the ultimate cleanser.
Yeah, perhaps. And then moments later, again, this isn't in the film, so the book has far more scares than the film does. When they entered, they found the television on, turned to static snow. Carol Ann stood in front of it, inches from it, staring into it, her eyes wild with alarm. The little red plastic stethoscope was still around her neck. She was screaming uncontrollably. The party quickly ended. I'd love to know if this was all part of the original script, which is one of the few scripts with Spielberg having writing credits. So I'm quite interested in that.
Usually how my parties end.
Yeah, you screaming uncontrollably.
Yeah.
Get out!
I don't want parties anymore! And then the next year I have another party. I don't seem to learn. And I have a fear of TVs. Yeah, this is what a novelization should be, and what they were to me as a kid, is that it's almost like there's deleted scenes. And yeah, that's the thing. I often read one and went, I wonder if that was actually in the script, or not.
Or if Kahn's using his imagination. When we did Temple of Doom, Kahn wrote this massive backstory about Short Round being being a runner in crackdens and stuff like that, and running around rooftops and having a brother and a brother that became the elephant that he rode on. He felt like the elephant that he rides on is his brother reincarnated, and all this crazy stuff that Kahn has added to the story.
That's cool.
Yeah, so he does love to embellish. This was a line that I love, though, with the party staff. You could be magic on your birthday. And he uses that when Robbie says a little bit of an intentional, unintentional pun at a really tense time, and everybody laughs, and it's like, on your birthday you're special, you can do anything, you can change the mood of everyone around you, and I thought that was really sweet.
Just a couple. There's the dog's name that was really bugging me. His name is E-Buzz, which my dog's name was Buzz. Apparently it was a Dan Aykroyd Saturday Night Live character. That's really obscure. No one watching it now would get that. And it's a really awful skit as well. Dana is pretty useless, and her bits in the party just went on. Yep.
Yeah, you kind of wonder why she's there, actually, because she's absent for most of when the shit starts going down, she goes and stays at friend's place, so she's not in it very often at all.
What exactly? Yeah, it's the older sibling symptom. It happened in Happy Days. What's his name?
Richie.
Richie had an older brother who showed up really early on, and then they didn't really know what to do with him, so he just disappeared.
Did he go to war or something?
Probably. Victor Frankenstein has an older brother who's mentioned once and then never again. In that 70s show, Eric had an older sister who was there for a while, and then they just got bored with her.
And she spontaneously combusted.
Yes.
In a cold opening of a very special episode.
Yeah, that's why I've learnt from that. I think even if you want a character to have a big family, don't create specific characters unless you actually intend to use them.
Don't wear wooden pants and rub your legs together, because it could start a fire.
And there was another deleted scene with a PTA meeting where a mother threatens to use violence against a teacher who is pro-corporal punishment. So...
Oh, the ironing.
That's, yeah. Okay. And she also wolfs down a chocolate donut, so it was a very American scene. We needed one in there.
No hamburgers in this film, but there is some pizza later, so it's not a total wash. I really do like the characterization, though. I thought the family was very nuanced. Steve sat in bed in his shorts, rolling a joint and watching an old Bogart movie on the tube. Diane jumped in and sat beside him. "Were you that scared when you were his age?" she asked. "What scared?" "Robbie, the poor kid's scared of the closet." "It's the age. 7 is closets. I remember." "Oh yeah? What's 37? "Interest rates. I'm scared of interest rates now. What worries you?" Lightning sizzled miles away. The television set crackled with static. Steve licked the paper, put one end in his mouth, lit the other, inhaled. I like the dialogue in the book. I think they have a very natural, fun, playful way of talking to each other.
Yeah.
Which you don't really see in, especially family films.
Steve was kind of annoying in the film at the beginning. I mean, he tones it down a bit towards the end. But yeah, a book version is better.
I love that actor, though. He's Mr. Incredible.
Is he?
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
Now I'm trying to think of his voice. Huh.
I love, we're jumping ahead a bit, but when the investigators come in and he shows them the room and he's just completely given up by this stage and he's drinking the beer and he's just like swigging his beer and he just points them.
Yep.
Here you go, check this out.
Diane was a bit that way too. It's like, oh, you here to help? Well, yeah, that happens, and yeah, it's totally normal.
We'll get there. A thunderstorm unleashes more wonderfully written tree creepiness.
I loved trees as a kid. They look like lightning hitting the earth. That was what I thought of them as a kid.
Again the lightning. The tree bent forward now, clenched its broken fists, battered the side of the house. The hollow that formed its mouth was open wide, laughing, screaming. 2, 3, the thunder came more quickly this time, heavier, more insistent. It seemed to grab the house and shake, and it wouldn't let go. The tree claws began tapping at the window. The wind keened like a ghoul. Rain began to leak under the window. Robbie tried to close his eyes, but he couldn't look away, couldn't not see. As I said, this film preys on fears, and these kids aren't even safe in their parents' bed, which is the one place that you think you are safe. You assume you are safe when you're in there, because they all go in for a slumber party. The TV flicks to static, and this happens.
Did you ever sleep in your parents' bed? My brothers did. I hated it.
Oh, no, I did. I always felt safe there.
I liked being alone. Yeah, I was an odd child. Little Spock baby. A hand of smoke, formless without substance, exuded from the television screen towards the little girl. Without form, yet somehow hand-like, with fingers that curled upward, then down, momentarily encompassing her head, palpitating her, tasting the softness of her hair, her delicate neck. Then it rose, this handlessness rose above the girl and stretched further into the room, stretched into pulsing tendrils along an ectoplasmic arm that grew longer every second, remaining attached to the screen, stretching until the hand hovered above the bed, above the peaceful sleepers.
Yeah, it's a really creepy scene. I mean, it's dated in special effects wise. It's clearly like
rotoscoping,
animation over the top.
I love that though because of Ghostbusters.
But it's still really spooky. It kind of probes around and then it bores a hole into the wall essentially above their bed. It like disappears through there.
I think animation is actually perfect for ghosts and spectral, supernatural things, because it looks so unnatural. It looks so otherworldly. If you do it just right, it doesn't look too cartoony.
Yeah. I'd love to see, there's been talk about, it might even have been greenlit, a remake of Poltergeist. And I wonder how they would do that just from a technology perspective. I can't imagine it ever being as effective as the original.
There is something about old horror films, the grunginess of them and the whole, I guess, improvised nature of those movies is what makes them what they are.
Do you think it'll be about a little girl being trapped in an iPad?
Yes.
I mean, a TV. Even if she was in the TV, she'd be like, "Mommy, is that you? Mommy." And she'd be like, "Oh, look, I'm just going to DVR you, baby, and I'm going to, like, watch you later. I
got some Kardashians to watch."
Yeah.
That's my mom.
This is how you end your first chapter. Everyone jumped awake, Robbie immediately crying. The room suddenly began shaking, the window cracked, pictures dropped from the walls, the light bulbs exploded, the ceramic figurines flew across the room, shattered against the dresser, and then, just as suddenly, Everything stopped. The room fell into an unnatural hush. Outside, the storm passed away utterly. For a long moment, nothing moved. And then Carol Ann whispered,
"They're here."
one of the most famous lines in movie history.
It's so strange when a film becomes a legend or an icon and then you go back and watch it and go, yeah, it's just a movie. It started out the same way as any other film, yet there's something about it.
Well, that's the kind of difference. Like, I bet you if they remade it, the camera would, like, pull in really tight on this little girl and she'd be creepily lit and she'd, like, her eyes would be dancing and she'd go, "They're here." But in the film, like, it's not even it's a big wide shot, I think, when she says it. Like, everything's all going crazy and... You know, it's not actually
those moments become big after the fact, not because they were big in the film itself, oftentimes.
Now, look, the next day occurs. There's no burgers present, like we said, but here's a bit of a mystery. Now, we could try and Google this to explain it, but I thought maybe our American listeners might be able to help us out with this one instead. A small black and white Sony on the counter blared the Today Show. Dana was fixing her hair in the reflection of the microwave window and eating a figurine.
Like an action figure?
An action figurine. She was eating a beast man.
Yep.
Should have been eating a moss man. That would leave her breath pine fresh. Don't eat the stinkers. So if anyone knows what eating a figurine is... we've obviously had a stab at it and probably don't have the right answer.
I think we're quite spot on.
Although Smurfs were very popular figurines back in the day. Maybe she's having a bowl of Smurfs.
Maybe that's why they put those warnings on the Kinder Surprises over there. She's eating that figurine.
Maybe she's eating a figurine and in the middle of it is a small chocolate.
Yes.
Could be. "Gotta run," said Steve. He grabbed a muffin, grabbed a feel, and was out the door before Diane could chastise him. I like that line. And I also really loved this bit in the film. This is one of my favourites.
"Don't you ever try to cover up with lies," Diane scolded. "Lying is much worse than spilled jelly." Okay. She stormed into the broom closet and got a sponge mop to clean up the mess. When she came back into the kitchen a moment later, she let the mop clatter to the floor, and for just a second she lost her breath. All 6 kitchen chairs were piled in a neat pyramid atop the table, reaching clear up to the ceiling. Carol Ann stood motionless beside the sink, right where Diane had just left her. Her eyes were wide with wonder.
I love that sequence in the film. It's so simple, such a simple idea, but if you're not expecting it, really creepy. We've got the little girl sitting on the bench. There's a table behind her with all 5 chairs or something around. The camera pans as the mother goes to a cupboard in the kitchen, just for a couple of seconds, and then when it pans back, the chairs are in a pyramid on top of the table. And apparently that's all one take. They actually have people rush in and take away the chairs while other people put a pre-made pyramid of chairs in its place.
Oh, that's quite clever.
Like there's no cut.
Theatre.
Yeah.
Also I was going to say that scene where Diane's asking Carol Ann, do you remember saying they're here last night? That dialogue is just so naturalistic, and the other kids are talking over, and there's all these interruptions, and it's brilliant. The other thing I like is, there's that trope where, someone sees something supernatural and, it happens over and over again. But the moment someone else is present so they can show them, it suddenly doesn't happen so that they think that person is crazy. Well, when Steve comes home and Diane shows him the chairs, no, it still happens. So they avoided that trope, thankfully.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I thought it was going to go that way too, but it's such an amazing scene. She puts the chair in a chalk circle on one end of the kitchen.
Yeah, she's doing all this science stuff.
Yeah, she's got all these arrows of its trajectory drawn, and then it, pushes to the other side of the room, and then she puts Carol Ann on the floor wearing a football helmet. And Carol Ann shoots across the room and her dad catches her on the other side. And then even Diane rides it across. It's so good. And he's just like, what the fuck? And in the book, he actually has far more thought processes about that. Like, he's trying to explain it away. He thinks it's maybe magnetized. There's an electric field nearby. He's trying to find a way to explain what's happening, but can't.
What's the thing? Oh yeah, so Diana actually hits Carol Ann in that scene where she says "Don't tell lies," which is ironic considering the previous PTA scene. Both are just added for the book, but yeah, it's okay. Why would you hit Carol Ann? She's so adorable.
It's an echo of that Superman scene in the 70s Superman where the little girl goes, Mommy, Mommy, I just saw Superman. You hear this whack and she goes, don't tell lies.
That's so mean.
That was the School of Hard Knocks. That's
Also,
where we all grew up.
What is with all like the name Carol Ann sounds so American. It's just intrinsically American. It's because you've got two names in one. Although, yeah, if I were to be Courtney June, because that's my surname, middle name, so yeah, that's quite American immediately.
I'm Luke Cameron.
Luke Cameron? Yeah, maybe.
It's a bit long, bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, Courtney June sounds like a country singer.
We're introduced to parapsychologist Dr. Lesh, and James Kahn lists her various beliefs and interests, but this is the bit of characterization that I most enjoyed. Her favourite quote was by the astronomer Fred Hoyle. The universe is not only stranger than we imagine, it is stranger than we can imagine. Dr. Lesh had this quote taped to the wall over her desk.
I love that quote so much.
And a great way to introduce a character's belief system. Now, this is a massive difference from the book, from the film. The film mainly stays with the family, and the book has quite a few scenes where it goes to Dr. Lesh. And
the Ghostbusters, that version of the Ghostbusters.
There's Ryan and there's Marty. There's three of them, and the book also spends quite a bit of time with Tangina.
Yeah, that's how we'll pronounce it.
That's how we're gonna say it.
Yeah, Tangina.
Because we're 12. Though she only turns up very late in the film, so all these characters get fleshed out, and there's a lot of psycho babble here. A lot of
pseudo-scientific talk.
Yeah, it's quite a departure from the family scenes, and it took me out a little bit, but it is interesting, and it does add a lot of depth. When I watched the film and realised that none of it was there, I was kind of missed it, to be honest.
Yeah, they spend pretty much equal parts with the family, then with the, I'm going to call them Ghostbusters, and then Tangina. Funny little sentence that I read though. She was 61 years old and wore her hair tight, making her seem like a severe woman, but she was not severe. I hate when people do sentences like that where they just repeat the word. It's like, what are you trying to convey there?
Oh, well, look, this is contrasted with her chief lab technician, Marty. Marty was 23, thought of himself as a cool dude, and didn't believe in much of anything but his bi-monthly paycheck.
Cool dude.
Often see Marty cruising the Piggly Wiggly, buying big gulps with his freshly cashed check. And these guys are analysing the dreams, paranormal experiences, and psychic powers of a woman called Tangina. This is the Tangina. This is the little, short, little lady, 4-foot lady with the high voice that comes into the film.
Her voice really took me out of it for a second. Like, whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah, she doesn't turn up in the film until right near the end, and she's only in it for about 15 minutes. But in the book, we really get to hear about her and what's going on.
They use the word midget, which is not politically correct.
Refer to her as an arcane midget, actually, and she's been troubled with all sorts of dreams of dead people and supernatural goings-on, which we'll get to in a tick. But at the moment, lots of weird things are happening in the house. The dog's barking at a mysterious brown stain on the wall, and the chairs are shooting across the kitchen floor by themselves, in full view of both parents, as we said. Who are now getting very suspicious about the nature of this house they've bought.
That dog seems to be a bit of a cleanliness Nazi, always barking at the bits that Diane missed.
Yeah. Oh. Dishes in the sink.
Yeah, could you imagine a dog just sitting there? It's like, why are you barking at the sink? Oh, right. Well, then. If
they train guide dogs, they should train guilt dogs to bark at undone chores.
It also says the stain, the shape of some kind of thing. Okay.
Look, he's a really great writer, but he's going so fast, so hard that sometimes you just need a breather. This sequence really surprises me. Some serious shit goes down in the second storm. Like the trees tapping.
Shit that will turn you white.
Yeah, well, the trees tapping at the window. and I'm not expecting it to break through, grab the boy, and try and eat him. In fact, when...
Yeah, because I like trees. Trees are our friends. This is playing on things we have every day.
I know, there's a family of Ewoks living in it. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
But when I think of this film, my memories of it as a kid, I always think the tree attacks in the climax. But no, like right early on, sort of end of Act 1, the tree bursts in and...
The pace of it is the entire story is pretty interesting like that in terms of how it just ramps up at an uneven pace.
Yeah.
You're kind of thrown off a lot of the time.
You don't know when the scares are coming. Carol Ann jumped awake as another chorus of lightning turned the night into a raging cold furnace. Long finger-like twigs at the end of the great branches tangled the screaming boy like rotting skeleton hands, and as the tree swayed in the wind, lifted him out of bed. And meanwhile, Carol Ann goes flying into the closet.
Carol Ann dug her fingers into the mattress, screaming, crying, nearly unhinged with fear. But she didn't begin to know fear until she heard the wail of the beast. It was a low, insane sound, a sound unlike anything she'd ever heard. The sound of bedlam. The beast in the closet. It covered the sound of the storm. It pulled Carol Ann's bed towards the light.
Light is almost a character in this film. There is so much screaming about light. There are so many eerie lights flickering around all over the place.
Go towards the light. Don't go towards the light. Stay away from the light.
Yeah, you get so confused. It's like, what? Yes, no, back, no, what? Huh, what? And I was really surprised the tree's a character too. It just gets sucked into a tornado and disappears.
Yeah, that was quite abrupt.
It does. It says in the book that the tree gets sucked into the demon night. And the family just think, oh, this whole thing was a twister, until they realise that Carol Ann is now trapped inside the television set.
When Robbie in the movie starts screaming, he's like, Ma, Ma, and he's like, oh, it's disgusting, oh, it's gross.
Nothing is on TV except Carol. Very depressing.
I'm actually glad they didn't show her in the TV. You know, there was nothing to actually be seen on the screen.
No, you just hear her disjointed voice.
Because that would have cheapened it, I think.
So clearly we're going to need a big old Tangina to solve this mess. Tangina Barons was 52, on the plump side, bespectacled, tended to dress in floral chiffons, and ordinarily wore her thin hair up in a tight bun. For most of her life, she'd had dreams. Special dreams.
Special dreams.
That's an understatement. And she's clearly somewhat of an expert here. She's got, she's very sensitive. She's like a barometer for spectral activity.
Consequently, Tangina was at the end of her tether. 10 years of witnessing and isolating other people's horrors and losses had almost burned her out. She'd been hired by frantic parents to find missing children, by stumped police departments to find disemboweled corpses, by grieving widows to contact lost loves, but they couldn't pay her enough to do that anymore. She wanted an end to it. She could no longer turn it off.
And a lot of time is spent here developing Tangina's supernatural dreams while being studied by Lesh, Ryan and Marty. I do prefer the focus to be the family, but there's this kind of weird Ray Stantz-esque love for all the supernatural stuff on show here. Yeah. And it does get really fun and weird like this. And
actually, yeah, I could imagine James Kahn is just Ray as he's writing this.
Another creature appeared. He was an orange flame, vaguely human. He flew. His voice was the voice of a brush fire. His name was Fantabel.
I believe that's a character in Midsummer Night's Dream.
Fantabel.
It's not actually a real name.
Fantabel danced with Skidoo. They were my favourite death metal band.
Skidoo it means shadow. It's a word of Germanic origin.
Oh, they touched, sizzled, parted. Fantabel became many flames, red, yellow, white. He babbled in his fire tongue. Skidoo extinguished him. He reappeared in another sector, only now he carried the girl. A small girl, perhaps 5 years old, Tangina thought. Carolina, a blonde girl. She seemed lost, overwrought.
Yeah, I like the narrative of the other dimension. It's alien. It hints at something far greater than what we see. And it reminds me of Lovecraft. And it's that kind of horror fantasy that's only effective in writing.
Yeah, I can see that. And it's these visions that lead the trio to the family house, and they hook up with the main story. Not with Tangina yet, it's just Ryan and Lesh.
It's very Game of Thrones.
Martin.
He's got all these different...
Marty. And they encounter a total weirdness in Carol Ann's room, which is no longer being used. And this was the bit where in the film, the dad has the beer and just sort of
giving shits.
points them in the direction of this bedroom. Because the guy, it's so funny because Ryan's going, I once saw a car move across a flat countertop, like a toy car, and he's going, it took 7 hours. It was unnoticeable to the naked eye, but you can see it on my time-lapse footage, and the father's like, okay, and he opens the door, and this is what they see.
The cripple's bed hopped about in circles as if something were vibrating the floor wildly. Records flew around in great arcs. A lamp careened by, nearly striking Ryan on the head. Toy animals sailed up and down, the stuffing half torn out. Picture books flapping around the upper levels. A small plastic horse cruised by, ridden and slapped by a Barbie doll. The window was boarded up with a large piece of plywood, but inside the bedroom a dark wind blew.
This is one of those things.
So what do you think of your toy car now, man?
This is even better in the film because the lamp comes apart in two bits. It's the stand and the cover, and it goes together and lights up. A compass with a pencil in it comes by and nearly stabs Lesh in the eyes. And it's not Barbie on a horse, it is like a Mego Hulk doll. And the Hulk slaps the horse and rides past, and that is the funniest fucking thing.
I didn't even notice. I have to go back and see.
Yeah,
that's going to be a GIF now.
Hulk on a horse. Someone find that GIF, because that is the absolute best bit. I was watching and I went, Hulk on a horse! And it was the only bit I wasn't scared at. So the investigators start using all their fancy equipments and talking to Carol Ann through the TV. And an unseen, foul-smelling beast rampages through the house, and Marty is bitten by a creature that we don't see that has 12-inch jaws. So everything is ramping up tremendously. So they decide to have a sleepover catered for by Mr. Pizza.
This is totally random, but I had a dream. Well, dreams, they're kind of relevant.
This is relevant, yeah.
Yeah, I had a dream that we decided to get kids to read all the parts from the book out. So they would read out, because you decided that we were all really shit at reading the passages. So you got children in to prove that children could do it better.
It sounds like something I would do, yes.
It was a great dream. And then we just, talk about what they said, but they weren't allowed to listen to what we were saying because, it's mature stuff.
So they'd talk and then we'd cover their ears.
It was a great dream.
This is a nice explanation of the poltergeist. Maybe they didn't want to die. Maybe they weren't ready. Maybe they'd hardly begun to live yet, or they lived a long, long time anyway, but wanted more life. They resist going into the light, no matter how hard the light wants them. They hang around, watch television, watch their friends grow up, feeling all unhappy or jealous, and those feelings are bad. They hurt. Then there are some people who just get lost on the way to the light. Maybe they got sidetracked or just curious about something else. They need someone to lead them there. To the light.
You can put that to music, I think.
I like that scene as well, Robbie's dialogue. I didn't write it all out. It's in the film as well, where he's talking about if I died, would I be able to go and help Carol Ann and find...
That's very sweet.
And he has all these theories about it. They really explore this idea of what all these various dimensions and other sides and who's trapped, who's not, what's going on. And then this is very memorable. Marty goes to get a midnight snack, and something happens to his steak.
A strange, uncharacterizable sound, gushy, bubbling, a crawling sound. It was coming from the area where he just laid the steak. He turned quickly in time to see a shape moving there. He raised his light to illuminate the counter. The steak was alive with death. Grotesquely, he crawled along the counter and over itself, growing, bubbling with cancerous tumours. Cassius Blebs?
Cassius Blebs? Cassius Blebs? I've never heard of that. It sounds like a band. Cassius Blebs! And this is a little bit later. This is the bit people will really remember. Still leaning over the sink, he slowly regularized his breathing, slowly quieted his gag reflex. He felt weak and faint. Slowly he lifted his head up to look in the wall mirror to check his pallor. The reflection of his face in the mirror was of a rotting corpse. Its hair streamed insanely, its mouth dangled open. Horrified, out of control, Marty raised his hands and plunged his fingers into the putrescent flesh of his own face. The image in the glass mimicked his action. His hands tore into necrotic muscle, pulling chunks of tissue off oozing bone. Teeth hung by leathery threads. Clots of slime ran down, covering his arms. He screamed, but no sound came. In the film, when he's tearing off his own face, those are Steven Spielberg's hands. And the reason was they only had one dummy. And everyone was afraid of not getting it right, so Spielberg went and did it himself.
Yeah, it's such a bizarre scene because it just keeps escalating and it's just going...
Well, that's the extent of it in the film. Like, he just pulls his face off. But in the book, it's really expanded. It goes on for a couple of pages. There's hundreds of spiders. And if you've got a spider phobia, he really describes the spiders for a few paragraphs, all the different types and their hairy legs and all this sort of stuff. And rats as well emerge from the woodwork and they begin to devour him. The floor was thick with spiders, but the rats ran right over them, right up to Marty. They began chewing through his shoes, quickly accomplished, and then went on gnawing to his toes. The pain was unbelievable, but somehow sensing that seemed to stir the rats into a greater frenzy. They nibbled up his shins, devoured his flesh, feasted on the torn skin and oozing muscle until he was nothing but an articulated skeleton of bloody greasy bones. Then for a long time the rats lapped the bones. He gets turned into a skeleton, but he does get better.
Oh, well, there's still more to come.
Yeah. So he goes back, joins the group. He's all fine. He's back to normal. But a swirling mist monster comes down the stairs now, and creatures from Carol Ann's dream. This doesn't happen in the film, but they dance around the room like Fantabelle and
Shadoo.
Yeah, and unlucky Marty goes to the toilet and transforms into a beast.
Yep.
Which doesn't happen in the film.
He had the seam of his pants ripped down the back. He smiled again. A well of saliva brimmed over his lower lip, drooled in a long string down to the floor, collected there in a pool. He bent his head down and licked the spittle off the floor. That was easy, for his neck had become longer and angled forward somewhat, and his jaws protruded a bit in a kind of snout. So it was easy to lean forward and lick up the spit. Easy, and he liked it.
He also, in the book, drinks out of the actual toilet bowl, which I thought was pretty amazing. And then he goes back to the group, and you're expecting him to be like this big beast that bursts in and causes chaos, and he comes in naked and like waddling like an orangutan and slobbering.
It's just disgusting, yeah. This guy goes through some shit.
They're quite accepting of it, though, aren't they? They don't really freak out. It's kind of brushed over.
They're a bit distracted at that moment, I think.
Ryan's just like, damn, son, put some pants on. And they find a horrible thing on the videotape because they taped the spirit coming down the stairs. And this is what they see. Almost whimsically, she stared out of the monitor, floated closer, filled the picture, paused, came closer still until the whole screen darkened, turned black. The murky image of the woman shifted shape within the darkness, horribly transformed. Two bright glowing spots appeared, then pulled back. They were eyes. Eyes in the centre of a lightless, shapeless head. Shapeless but vile. Gradually the head resolved itself until it could be dimly seen, though still the shape was difficult to gauge, for it was the grinning face of rank chaos, horror incarnate, madness embodied. The spirit work in the film is brilliant. It's really creepy ghost stuff that I haven't seen that effective in any other film I can think of.
It's used just the right amount, and the designs are really interesting too.
That one that comes down the stairs, I think, is genuinely scary. It's really bizarre.
So two things that bothered me, both in relation to Robbie.
Fucking Robbie.
God. He sat huddled in the corner, rocking autistically. Was that comparison really necessary? I mean, people can rock when they're upset without... Okay.
Maybe he meant artistically.
Artistic, yep, that's alright then.
Like the thinker.
So the other one was teleportation, like when Mr. Spock beams up Captain Kirk in Star Trek. Oi, kid, that was Scotty's job, bitch. Gosh, why make the comparison if you clearly are a Star Wars kid? I've seen your bedroom.
That's true. There's a lot of Star Wars stuff. Even when all the toys are going into the closet, like when they're all getting pulled in by the black hole in the closet, you can see like a beat up TIE fighter and all sorts of shit.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
This is why this kid should not be making Star Trek references.
Didn't Spock ever do it though? Like if Scotty had had a bit to drink?
I mean, technically, yes, everyone's had a go at the transporters, by the way.
But if you're going to make the comparison, you may as well get it right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the morning, they send Robbie off to Grandma's. Diane takes a nap, but very sinister things are happening, which don't happen in the book.
No.
Inch by inch, the wrinkled hem rose above her knees, past her thighs, over her hips. The material doubled against itself at the middle of her back, but kept rising higher until the bottom of the dress was pulled up on top of her head like a gay yellow shroud, leaving her practically bare from the waist down. Her legs were completely flaccid, but somehow they moved, straightened, pulled apart.
No.
The flesh of her thighs was kneaded by invisible manipulations.
No.
Pushed in, squeezed, 2 tiny half-moon nail marks suddenly appeared in the crease of her left buttock.
No.
With a snort, she twitched once, roused a bit. Her snoring stopped. She turned slightly, breathed deeply a few times, then settled back into sleep. For 15 minutes, nothing else happened. Then there were the fingers again, unseen, poking, prying. Her cotton briefs were pulled to the side, her skin stretched tight. Guttural sounds rose like bubbling sewer gas over the bed, but did not waken her, for sleep was her last refuge.
God damn, that's creepy.
That's really creepy and really quite graphic.
Yeah.
It's not in the film, and it doesn't have a payoff in the book, really.
She does. There is one part where she gets her dress pulled over. It gets pulled up. Which is quite brief. I think that's that one, but they've just elaborated on and put in different order.
Don't you feel like, though, when somebody has sex with a ghost, that they then should be possessed or something? That's what usually happens. That's usually the trope. Kind of like in This Is the End, when he gets that, and Jonah Hill gets the night visitation.
Yeah. Oh no.
Oh yes.
Yeah, so I can't believe she slept through that, because if a slight breeze passes through my room, I'm like, what the fuck was that?
And then a talk with Steve's boss. I thought this was, out of all the chaos that was happening, I thought it was weird Steve went for a walk with his boss.
Yeah.
But reveals that Steve's house just might happen to be on top of an Indian burial ground.
Simpsons did it. You know, it's funny, this movie and The Shining, and maybe Exorcist as well, I knew about those films because of The Simpsons.
Yeah, I used to know about a lot of films just through their Mad magazine parodies. So Tangina spends a few pages in hospital while battling Carol Ann's demons in her dreams.
Yeah, she has a whole Doctor Strange adventure.
Yeah, and then there's also a lot of time here where Lesh tries to convince her colleagues that the videotapes and everything of the ghosts are real, but everyone thinks it's a hoax and dismisses it. And then we have another lengthy scene with Tangina, who goes into a morgue, enters a trance, and battles the Beast, who is the villain of the piece, in a dreamscape. And this is all really crazy and completely unfilmable. He turned into an acid jelly, squirted hard upon her face. She changed to glass, and the caustic gel oozed down her surface. He became a craggy boulder, tried to shatter her. This is like a wizard battle. She shifted shape to water, let him pass, and wet his skin. He heated up to burn her, sizzling. She evaporated. He supercooled the ether, caught the ice crystals as they condensed, crushed them in his fist. She transmuted into tiny spikes that slashed his palm. He roared. The laceration spewed her with his odious blood, covered her with the oily black substance. Like fluid depravity, it burned her, made her gag. The fumes reeked so of malignancy. And for a while, she even gets trapped inside the beast's lungs. Can you imagine, like, doing a scene with that little...
It would look ridiculous.
Arcane midget woman trapped in his lungs.
It would be ridiculous.
Get me out of his lungs! And meanwhile, back at the house, they all reunite and they brace for another night. And Ryan sees a face of the beast pulsating in the wall. That doesn't happen in the film. And then Tangina finally shows up to the house, turns up on the doorstep, ready to kick ass.
Well, hold on, dear people. There's one more thing. A terrible presence is in there with her. So much rage, so much betrayal. I've rarely sensed anything like it. It was strong enough to punch a hole in the wall and take your daughter from you. It keeps Carol Ann very close to it and away from the spectral light. It uses her to restrain and distract the others, and to draw them away from the light, so they cannot escape his domain. It uses her and lies to her. It says things only a child can understand. She fears it, but she fears to wander too far from it, for it is the only one who can speak to her, and who knows her secret language. It is the beast. It sought her from the very beginning. Tangina cupped Diane's face in her hands and brought it close to her own. Let's get on our feet and go get your daughter.
Okay, so basically, they're realizing there's a portal in the closet which ejects stuff out of a hole in the ceiling downstairs. Totally got to be where the whole portal game came from.
Yeah.
In the closet, out the ceiling. And so Diane goes into the portal on the end of a rope which Steve holds on the closet side, and Ryan is waiting under the ceiling for whatever's going to fall out. But at that moment, Steve looked up to see the face of the beast slowly forging from the closet light. Like a simian skull, it had huge hollow eye sockets, a protruding mandible, savage fangs. Tense, stringy muscle gave it a hideous snarl. Maniacally it salivated. A proto-human face, yet its canine teeth were almost tusk-like. Its nose fell into raw bone. The face filled the entire length and width of the closet door. Viciously it opened its depraved jaws. Wretched, debased sounds blew the boards off the window, filled the room with vile gas. The head began to emerge. Closets, of course, another big fear of children. Here's your closet monster.
Oh, I just remember what I was afraid of. Elvis.
Elvis.
Yes.
A big Elvis head emerging from the closet.
No!
Chewing like cheeseburger grease all over his chin. Good evening, ma'am. You think about that tonight.
I will never watch Bubba Hotep for that very reason.
Bubba Hotep's good, you should watch it.
I know, it's so conflicting. But I love Bruce Campbell.
But you hate Elvis.
What is a person to do?
But look, Carol Ann and Diane crash through the floor, closing the portal and leading Tangina to say her catchphrase.
Hi, Daddy, said Carol Ann. She'd just had a long, bad dream she would tell him about later. Thank God, whispered Diane through her tears. Oh, thank God. Her hair was salted grey. The three of them continued hugging in the tub. Very strange sentence. Tangina leaned, exhausted, against the bathroom door. Now she too could rest. This house is clean, she murmured.
The house is clean, so that means it's all resolved, right?
Don't tell lies! Lies are worse than spilled jelly!
The scientists go home and the family prepares to move house.
But you really do feel like it is the end of the movie.
Yeah, that was the end. We had the big confrontation, the beast came out of the closet, everything's fine now. But
Yeah.
Robbie looked over at the new rocking chair, resting quietly in the corner. The old clown doll sat there bolt upright, quirkishly, the only remaining plaything left over from before. Oh, snappers.
Damn it, boy, I told you, burn it with fire. It's the only way.
An unseen force attacks and molests Diane in the bathroom, pushes her up the wall, and Robbie realizes his clown is gone.
Can't sleep. Clown will eat me.
Upside down like this, he peered into the darkness under the bed. The clown was there, smiling sardonically. Robbie gasped, but before he could move, the doll's arms rapidly elongated, stretched out toward the boy, and began to wrap themselves tightly around his neck. Around and around they wrapped, 4 times around his neck, cutting off his air. Then, with the strength of a maniac, the doll dragged him struggling under the bed. For a moment, she just sat there panting. Nothing happened, she tried to think. This couldn't be happening. This was a clean house now. Tangina had said so. Oh no, we've got an unclean Tangina.
Unclean Tangina.
That's the worst kind of Tangina. Oh dear. So, Diane escapes the bathroom but is confronted by the spirit of the waiting woman who starts to transform into this hideous creature in front of her. Another really great effect in the film.
The corners of her mouth turned up, her lips stretched thin, and then kept stretching. Her entire face began to lengthen out, elongate forward, become pooled and slightly distorted in the front, the cheeks stretching horribly anterior. the 6 inches, 12 inches, as if there was a plunger behind her head pulling it out from an infinitely expanse-style occiput.
I have no idea. He likes his big words, doesn't he?
I've never encountered either of those.
He's got a good vocabulary.
Further and further out, until suddenly the face ruptured open, burst apart, revealing behind it the... Oh, sorry, I just gotta stop. Oh, Game of Thrones, man. Oh, flashback. Anyway. Revealing behind it a great skull head. Again, its eye sockets, infinitely black, and pointed teeth, venomous, the crater, nose protruding, brow, the beast.
Very smooth. And look, you got to say, we've criticised a lot of third acts. This is a pretty kick-ass third act. This is how you do a third act. Everything just goes insane. Diane is thrown into the muddy, unfinished pool outside. Another great bit of writing here.
You know what the first thing I thought of when I saw that scene? I went, she just had a bath. What is she going to do now? I mean, like, to have another bath?
I think she'll have to have another bath.
Oh.
Diane flopped around dizzily, trying to regain her balance in the quagmire. Suddenly a large gushing bubble exploded next to her in the mud. She gaped at it uncomprehendingly as a second bubble burst just a moment later beside the first. In each rose the leathery, rotting head of a corpse, in burial clothes, rising like an animated stalk out of the gushing bog.
Yeah.
Did you know that the rumour is that these were real dead bodies used in the film? Because it was cheaper for them to get human skeletons than plastic skeletons.
Thing is, though, they probably aren't as durable, and you can't really, I can't see them really working the same way.
But that's why they think that, I guess, like, maybe they were, like, real human ones that were wired together, you know.
Yeah, they do, well, that's what they do. They do put them on they wire them together, make an armature. But, because we had a real skeleton in my high school, and yeah, it's not as strong as a plastic one, which would be useless in a film. You'd be afraid of destroying it.
Well, the rumor is that's why the film was cursed, because of these, because it was about, desecrating human remains. That's why this family were being punished.
That would be ironic if they ended up
and they desecrated human remains while making the film.
Yeah, they would never use them.
That is Grandma in this film. I didn't know that. She was going to be on here. The closet opening was coming alive. Mounds of flesh began to grow all along the door frame, to puff up like undulating, visibly growing fungus. Then, as if the door itself were a living, pulsing organism, fatty tissue started to form along the borders of the fleshy frame. Veins rivuleted the soft pinkish skin, escaping back down into the maw of the closet until the closet itself was a giant mouth, all gums and lips, and blinding light trans-illuminating the pink-yellow tissues all the way back to the bottom of the mucoid pit, where a pale, oily esophagus could be seen generating its peristaltic spasms down to its abysmal depths. That sounds like a giant angina.
It's a bit, Silent Hill. And, I think Silent Hill is probably one of the scariest modern horrors. But, the thing is, when you're in Silent Hill, it's all horror. Like, the entire town is scary, whereas I think what makes Poltergeist effective is that it's just a normal suburban place, and then suddenly all the most horrible things you can imagine just happening under the roof.
Yeah, they're in the house. It's a great haunted house movie. Got to be the best, surely.
But crazy that they had so many opportunities to escape, and they didn't take them.
Well, no, I don't know if that was the case. Like, they didn't escape before because they couldn't escape without Carol Ann. They had to free her, and once they free her, they're told by someone who's supposed to be an expert that the house is clean, that it's all solved. They start the process of moving out straight away.
That's true.
And then it all goes to shit. Kahn is obviously bringing his A-game. He's not treating this like a media tie-in, just crank it out. This was a different time. He does rush through to the end, though. Like, those last 15 minutes of the film are really about 5 pages of the book. And before we know it, here is the ending. The window of the children's room glowed with an almost radioactive intensity. The entire house began to suck itself inward, the implosion focusing on the children's room, on the all-consuming closet. That is a great effect when the house just implodes.
Yeah. Didn't that happen in
Simpsons?
Carrie? Yes, yeah. Carrie, at the very end, she sucks the whole house down, or whatever it was. I swear that's how that ended.
I thought it ended with her hand coming out of a grave or something. I got no idea.
Yeah, no. So she sucked the house or destroyed the house, and then her hand comes out of just the dirt that remains.
Ah, okay. No, I have to see that. Steve stared, motionless, stunned. A concussion of awesome power blew all the shingles off the roof as a cloud of thin blue ectoplasmic vapor reached up like fingers towards the sky and disappeared. Moments later, the rest of the house was suctioned inward into a point in space 14 feet above the ground where the children's closet had been, until it was totally consumed. Empty space now where the house had recently existed. Suddenly, all was quiet. In a daze, Steve got back in the car. Carol Ann and Robbie were still crying hysterically. Diane was trying to comfort them. Dana stared out the back window in utter disbelief. The street was in chaos. Neighbours were streaming from their houses. Cars were careening out of driveways. The police arrived. A gas main was broken. High-tension wires sparked dramatically. Water spurted 30 feet into the air from the broken hydrant. Corpses and coffins and bones and putrefaction lay everywhere. Only the Freeling lot sat still and dark at the centre of the melee. Stephen veered his car around the casket, blocking his way, drove to the end of the block and turned the corner. The hysteria made the car slowly died down as Steve took them farther and farther from the scene of whatever it was. The night was clearing. The moon peeped from behind a cloud as the Freeling car passed the last sign at the outskirts of the city. You are now leaving beautiful Cuesta Verde Estates. Please drive carefully.
The entire family slowly climbed the outside steps to the second floor room of the Holiday Inn. It was an hour later. They just kept driving until they quieted down, then stopped in at the first place they came to. They were exhausted, but they were together, and it was over. Until the sequels. They entered the room, closed the door. A minute later, the door opened again. Steve walked out onto the balcony, pushed the big coloured television on its wheeled stand. With a look of triumphant determination, he gave it a long send-off shove down the balcony terrace. Then he turned and re-entered his room without looking back. He closed the door behind him. The television just kept rolling.
The end.
I was expecting it to turn on and then something strange in the neighborhood, because you see something that's
Ad for the Ghostbusters would come on. We're ready
Actually,
to believe
that
you.
would be perfect if that Oh, I have to edit it now.
What if the remake has ghosts in the Wi-Fi?
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying, is that there are so many internet horror films that really don't work. I hope they don't remake Poltergeist.
So
These are really groovy sunglasses, I'm just going to say. I feel like, I don't know, something out of maybe Mystery Science Theatre.
yeah, they're pretty futuristic.
I am Electro Boy. I am Electro Girl.
You look like you're from the future.
Oh, yes.
Or
Days
like,
of Future Past.
Or like RoboCop. I heard what was it? A funny pun on Days of Future Past, and I can't remember what it was.
Why does Magneto wear purple? Because the days of future had passed.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Got to ask you, as I ask everybody at this point in time, was the book better?
I think it's just as good, but you have to decide one way or the other. There's no being neutral here, which is very difficult for me because I'm quite neutral, just to my general being. I'd say...
You did know in advance I was going to ask you this question, right?
I did know it, but I have been thinking about it for quite some time, going, what is better? I mean, you can't beat the film. It's a classic, so I suppose I'll go with that. But I will say the book came a very close second, I suppose.
I love this film. I'm going to be controversial. I'm going to say the book. Only because I read it before watching the film again, and there were so many additional scares, and my imagination made everything so much grander and more frightening.
That's true, because I did watch the film before reading it.
The film, when I watched it, still had a lot of impact, but didn't reach the heights that the book did. And the book engaged me from start to finish, and I really didn't have any criticisms. I think one of the previous books that I really loved was Back to the Future, but even that got a bit weird with the rapey stuff.
Yeah.
And Temple of Doom, though this had rapey stuff as well, to be fair. And Temple of Doom was good, but it was just stuck with telling the story. So when the story got weak, the book got weak. Whereas this, I think, stands alone. If you never saw the film and just read the book, it would be satisfying.
I think I'll change my choice, that the book is better.
Oh, God. Tim's just had to,
Oh, he had to press backspace. And...
Backspace.
No, he puts it on an iron, some kind of iron sheet. He's just, got
He etches it in.
Etches it in, yeah.
He's got a stone tablet system, and he's chiseled it in. All right, look.
We haven't done any. Well, I don't think I've done any books that were better than the film, but I really like it. I like reviewing books that at least try. So I think that could be something I could do in the future. That might be my niche.
Books that are actually good.
Yes.
Sounds very controversial. I don't know if it'll take off, but let's see. So, look, the Amazon reviews really did reflect the quality of the book.
That's true, yeah.
A lot of it was 5 stars and quite articulate, like, rarely does a book written from a screenplay turn out better than this. Kahn's imagination expanded and expounded on what was a visual treat, with the movie into something mind-numbingly surreal in the written word. This book stands on its own in so many ways. So that's good.
You have to sort of...
Yes, have to
Abraham Lincoln pose.
tuck my thumbs into my lapels as I talk about this wonderful review. But
Yes.
not everybody had a great experience with the book.
What?
Listen to
you
this.
didn't... Oh, the audience misses out on certain things.
Yeah, you're doing very, very visual right now. Despite the same basic premise, the book offers many layers and depictions that are not in the film. It is a creepy and bone-chilling read, rich in imagination and dread, and is recommended even if you have seen the movie multiple times. But I must warn you, the day I got the book from Amazon.ca on a Friday night, I
so that's a
started
Canadian accent. Damn it.
reading it immediately. 2 hours later, I decided to put the book down and go for a cigarette. When I returned, my sister, looking terrified, asked me if I had somehow programmed the TV remote control to change the channel. Of course, I was a little confused. Program the remote?
I said...
And seeing the look of dread on her face, I would have said countenance, on her
Yes.
countenance, I asked why she was asking me this. Well, it turns out the TV started changing channels on its own. When my sister got up to look for the remote control, she found it resting next to my new, used copy of the book Poltergeist, a novel by James Kahn. True story. Yikes! Now,
Jinkies.
I may have placed the remote next to the book, but I cannot explain the channels changing on its own, and I won't even get into the mystery of the open front door, the event that occurred the following week, because I still have to live in that house. Read the book, but beware the poltergeists!
Yeah, so that happened.
Whoa.
That's pretty intense.
A haunted book.
Well, I have a haunted action figure. The night Harold Ramis died, my Egon figure fell off
The proverbial shelf.
the shelf.
An actual shelf.
An actual shelf. So, yeah. It's coincidences, man. They happen sometimes.
Sounds to me like there's something strange in your neighborhood.
I'm not going to call Tangina because she can't even clean one house.
Very
Whereas,
unclean Tangina.
yeah, whereas Ghostbusters cleaning up the town, as the song goes.
Maybe Bill Murray could come in with that thing that he, like, where he squeezes the thing and he's got the hose, and maybe he could clean out that Tangina.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. His Tangina is clean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening, listeners. Thank you so much, Courtney, for being back. It's great to have you back in the old co-pilot seat.
You're welcome.
We have missed you. And, yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. We've got lots of exciting things coming up. Do like us on Facebook, join the Book Was Better Facebook group, and, yeah, we shall...
See you on the flip. Catch you on the flip. Oh my god, it's been a while.
Georgie!
Ah.